Hello friends, my name is Shayla and today I'm here to talk about the things that I ended up rereading in the month of July. This is my reread roundup video. This is something I do every month. I have a few things that I choose to reread every month. It's usually one novel and one manga series, sometimes a little bit more, but that's always my goal, is to do at least one of each. And then I do this separate video where I talk about them and my thoughts on reread, whether they stay in my collection, whether they leave it, all those kinds of things. So let's go ahead and dive into the things that I reread in the month of July. First up, let's talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Most people are surprised that I enjoy this series, considering the majority of my manga taste. In this one, we're following a teenager named Shinji, and Shinji his mother passed away a long time ago, and he's been very estranged from his father for a long time. All of a sudden, his father calls him back to live with him, and Shinji doesn't understand why. Well, when Shinji shows up, these big giant alien things are attacking Tokyo. The person who's supposed to pick him up isn't there, so he's just kind of running along. And then the person shows up, and it's kind of this out of control, somewhat crazy younger adult woman. And they're basically on the run from this giant robot attacking this alien thing. And what Shinji then finds out is that his father is in charge of this program full of these mecha robots called Evas, and they are there to kind of protect the world. And now he wants Shinji to pilot one. So that's kind of the general premise within the series. It's kind of an apocalyptic kind of story in which Shinji's been tasked by his own father to save the world. There's an amazing cast of characters. The art is absolutely fantastic within this series. And it's very political meets religion, I think, is an easy way to describe it. And I really love the dynamics of this series. On a first read, I was floored by it. Now, I have to be honest, on a second read, there are parts of this series that I didn't enjoy quite as much. Not to a point where I would have it leaving my collection, because I still enjoy it as a whole. And certain characters that rubbed me really wrong the first time didn't rub me as wrong the second time, so it was kind of a trade-off. Where this one is definitely going to be staying in the collection. I think it's a fantastic series. Whether you watch the anime or read the manga, I think you're going to be fine. I know that the anime ends differently than this manga does, and I haven't experienced the end of the anime yet. It's something, we're in the middle of an Inuyasha rewatch right now, so as soon as we finish that, we're going to be doing Eva, and yes. So I would recommend this to people, but it's dark, it's depressing, you have to be in the right mindset for it, or you're just going to hate it. So go into it expecting it to be dark, broody teenagers that have basically been abandoned by adults, and they don't have fond thoughts of adults, and some of the adults don't have fond thoughts of other adults. And it's just a very interesting dynamic that I would recommend people try and at least experience on their own. Next, we have Volume 3 of Living Room Matsunaga-San. As it's been releasing physically, I have been rereading it. In this one, it is an age gap romance between a teenage girl named Miko and a manager of the boarding house that she lives in named Matsunaga-san, and hence Living Room Matsunaga-san. Other translations say Living with Matsunaga-san, and I think that would have come across better and a little easier for people to understand, but whatever, choices were made. And I really love the boarding house style of this story. I really love the artwork. The artwork is absolutely fantastic, and it's just been one of my favorites to reread. Again, because it's an age gap, it's not going to be for everybody. I mean, I'm not going to be telling teenagers to run out and read this, because that's encouraging them to start looking at guys that are 11 to 12 years older than them, and they should look at guys their own age first. That's how I'll always feel about that. I have grandparents who are 11 years apart, and so like my thoughts on age gaps are a little bit different than most people. But yeah, so just know that I'm still loving rereading this series. It's been a blast to reread it. And yeah, I do recommend the series as a whole if you can go into it knowing that it's fiction, not reality. And they're just really cute, and Matsunaga-san is drawn really well. So I enjoy looking at him. All right, and then I ended up rereading Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pao-Preto this month. Originally, I was going to be reading more of the Renegade series I was going to be rereading, but I ended up doing that a little bit early, so no need for that. And so this was my reread for the month. I reread this in preparation to read its sequel. If you want to know my thoughts, by the end of the sequel, you can check out my most recent wrap-up, and I talk a little bit more about Heart of Flames at sequel. But Crown of Feathers is a book in which we're following a young woman named Veronica, and she's been led to believe certain things her entire life. Her strongest desire is to become a Phoenix writer, and only men are allowed to be Phoenix writers in this world because they are afraid of the powers of women, if I remember correctly. I've read a lot since I read this, so forgive me if some of the details are a little bit murky. But in this one, she does that trope where she dresses up like a guy to be able to enter the Phoenix writers, and somebody finds her out, and obviously there's political intrigue and stuff, and it's much more evolved by the time the second book rolls around. And on a reread, I ended up really enjoying revisiting the story. The writing is easily accessible, which I really enjoy for a YA-based fantasy. And it's one of those things where if you're interested in Phoenix writers and political style fantasies, you'll probably really enjoy this. But if you're not, if you're looking for more of the Sarah J. Maas kind of fantasy, where it's more romance heavy, you're not going to quite get that. There is a romantic element to this story, but I don't think it overshadows the more political plot at stake here. And especially within the second novel, you don't see that the romance is taking over. So I appreciate that. Within the series, there is a male-male romance that I ship so hard, and they play a more prevalent role in the second book than in this first book, but they are present in the first book, and I really enjoy the series. I would call the series a solid 4. This is definitely not leaving my collection, and it was really fun to reread this with Lindsay this month. She hadn't read it at all, so it was really fun to get her organic reactions while I was rereading this, kind of like with the Lunar Chronicles throughout the rest of this year. And yes, really enjoyed this. So none of it's leaving my collection, obviously. I've yet to find something that's truly left the collection. I had a manga that was on the favorite shelf that got moved off the favorite shelf, but that's the biggest thing that's happened. Other than that, everything's pretty much stayed where I expected it to. So it's been really good. I've really been enjoying this series. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. If there's something on these shelves that you would love to see me reread, let me know down below. The next little while, I will be rereading the Stormlight Archive for the novels, and I still have my jar of manga series that I'd like to get reread this year. And yes, but I'm starting to take requests for next year. And I might choose to reread some others along the way, obviously. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy the series, and I will see you in the next one.